Good morning. How everyone's well, and I was just thinking about the oddity of being on stage with someone else with the last name beginning with the letter Z.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you before?
Not yet. Yeah.
It's never happened to me either. And so, welcome Joe. He is the VP of Product at Airbnb. Airbnb was started in 2008, and Joe was the third engineer back when the entire engineering department was working out of a bedroom in San Francisco. They had about 60,000 listings, and today it's grown to more than 2 million listings in, I think it's 34,000 cities and 191 countries, and probably, some of the audience today probably took advantage of Airbnb hosts to stay here for this trip. So if you have any questions about your host, you can ask Joe about them afterwards. Any questions about where to go, what to do, he's a great resource. And that's sort of what we wanted to talk about today. I think yesterday, thinking about some of the announcements from Snap Travel and Booking.com, Mezi, sort of this rush to embrace bots. And at Airbnb, I'll let Joe talk about this, but I think I want to sort of get into that, sort of take perhaps a different perspective, and maybe a note of caution even around the proper role of humans and technology when it comes to travel, particularly. So to begin, do you see bots as being good or bad for travel?
I think of it as being great for travel. Mm-hmm. If I zoom out for a second, when we talk about the product, are you talking about the technology or the actual experience? In Airbnb, we think about the product as the actual travel experience, what you have in the real world. That is the thing that we provide with our hosts. That's the thing that we actually sell. And so the technology, so I hear it louder, I don't know if the volume can go up. The technology that we actually deliver is a means to the product, not the product itself. And so we think a lot about, we're making some huge bets in AI. We're very interested in the future of bots, but it's really a means towards human connection. And we think about how can we push technology as far as possible and make technology great at what it's great at, so that we can empower humans to do what they're great at. Because what we think about is, what makes Airbnb special is that you go into someone's personal space and you see the world through their eyes, and you have that sort of human connection that I don't think technology is going to be able to replace in the next 10, 20 years.
And so we understand about the host being instrumental in that experience and that emotional connection to a place. And but what are some of the roles then that bots can, what role do you see them? I think we talked about sort of automating some tasks.
Yeah, I could give you two examples, especially on the host side, because the hosts, hosting an Airbnb is a lot of work. Like, you have to prepare for the guest to arrive, you have to coordinate the key exchange, you have to manage your business, you have to think about pricing. And I'll give you a couple examples of where we started there. On the subject of pricing, right? Our hosts, they join our platform, it's the first time they're doing it, they're putting their home or their room on the platform. They have no idea what to list their listing at, or their home at, what price per night. Mm-hmm. Everything on our platform is incredibly unique. It's comparing it to hotels like apple and oranges. Like, a lot of our hosts spend a lot of time looking through a lot of data to understand that. We made some big AI bets there in terms of okay, we think that we can look at all the attributes of homes and all the data we're getting into the market and help them do that and actually do it very dynamically. And so we launched a product called Smart Pricing for our hosts, where a host just sets their lower upper bound, almost like a stock trade, and then they hit a button, and then our machine basically moves it up and down the price based on demand. And I think one of the things that's really cool about this is that more hosts would likely overprice. Like, if the Pope comes to town, hosts think, oh, I can charge $1,200 a night. Turns out when the Pope came to Philadelphia, the average price was $162. And now that we have visibility, and then now the machine, our machine learning is moving that back and forth for them, they can maximize the revenue, but also make sure that they're not missing out on business because they're overpriced. So that's one example. Another example is has to do with the smart home. The smart home is something we're very, very excited about. Last year, we launched something where we can now integrate with smart locks, right? Key exchange, can sometimes be stressful for both guests and hosts, especially if a guest, is arriving late at night. Yeah. And now, you can connect to your smart lock to our system, and that's all automated behind the scenes. What we want to do is we want to make bets there and push technology to do things that technology can do better than a human, so that our host can focus on something more important, which is putting that flower on the table, that handwritten note, that thing that actually makes you feel a sense of connection that we don't think a computer can do just yet.
Right. And when we were talking earlier, you described a little about what you were saying before about, so the product is the trick, and the experience is really the what you're delivering. And so you had told me that thinking about Airbnb as being in the self-actualization business. And just we have a short video that I wanted to show, and then we can talk a little bit more about that. So let's see if this is going to play.
Don't go to Paris. Don't tour Paris. And please don't do Paris. Live in Paris. When you Airbnb in Paris, you have your own home. Make your bed. Cook. The stuff you normally do. Don't go to LA. Don't go to New York. Don't go to Tokyo. Live there.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier about the host placing a flower on a table, and that's certainly something that a bot cannot do. But more about those sort of in-destination experiences, and tell us a little bit more how Airbnb helps the host, how AI helps the hosts. And the guests, it's very different than sort of a Google query. It's sort of like Google meets Match.com or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of Google as like, the leader in search, right? But if you think about, what is the problem that Airbnb has to solve, it's actually quite different. Search is very one-sided, but the problem we're solving is actually two-sided. The guest has to find the right host for them, and every guest has a very different taste profile of what they're looking for, and then to some degree, the host cares even more about who is the guest that's going to stay with them. So it's a really two-sided problem. And so we've been doing a lot, especially with our latest product release in April, latest mobile release, to do a lot of matching behind the scenes. And actually, now we're starting to do a lot of matching in a more explicit way. So in our latest release, we're asking guests for a lot more questions, and things that don't even relate to the host, like what kind of characteristics you want in the neighborhood. And we have all this rich data that we've been collecting from our guests and from our hosts and from our community about what neighborhoods are like. And for example, I was in Paris recently for 2 weeks. 1 week by myself on work with our Paris office. The second week, my 14-month-old and my wife came over. And those are two very, very different experiences, even for me, who has the same taste across both weeks.
Work Joe and Dad Joe.
Yeah, work Joe, Dad Joe. And so the first week, I'm looking for something a bit more lively, and it kind of guides me more to the center of Paris. The second week, I'm looking for a bigger place where my daughter, who's just learning how to walk, can have more space to kind of move around. And those kinds of information have been traditionally hard to get, but we can put it into our matching.
Yeah, so you used the word taste before.
Yeah.
I think that's really something to focus on. So Google doesn't really know my tastes, and Airbnb is trying to do that when it's going to help me find an accommodation. So you mentioned explicit and implicit. So what are something, let's try to drill down on that for a moment. So if I was going to go to Paris, how would I know that the system's sort of looking for my taste and helping me?
Yeah, so
and also on the back end too, I guess, the host.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with the explicit, as I mentioned. Like you tell us what kind of neighborhood, lively or hip or quiet or family friendly, and on top of that, our AI is looking at everything you look at, every place you've stayed, what reviews you gave, and two people, if they open up the same Airbnb app and they search in the same city for the same dates, they're going to see radically different neighborhoods that are suggested for them. So that's a combination of explicit and implicit. The host stuff gets really interesting. For example, one thing we do implicitly is that we study, do hosts like long-term stays or short stays? Hosts will tell us this, but their behavior sometimes doesn't match. So if a host,
give me an example.
So if a host says, I'll accept any length of stay, but they never accept a one-night stay, we stop showing that in search results for people looking for a one-night stay. And that's kind of a win-win-win situation, because that host doesn't get bothered, the guest actually finds the right listing quicker, and then the host that actually wants a one-night stay gets it.
Right, right. And what about on the we just following Amazon here, and where do you see sort of the bot or that conversational interface happening? Right now, it's happening on a device and on a screen. Could you foresee a voice query coming at some point?
Yeah, I mean, we have hackathons at the office. We had one 2 weeks ago, and there are at least like three bots that came out of that, like 3 different projects with the Echo. It's stuff that we're super excited about. But
so can you tell a little bit more about those projects?
I can't, but it's more of a means to accomplish that experience. I don't think people are traveling halfway across the world to stare at technology.
Yeah.
I think we want to unlock the technology in the way that we can make that a lighter experience we'd like. And I mean, I was telling Rohit before I came on stage that when I was in my listing in Paris, I found myself asking Alexa questions in my listing that didn't have an Alexa.
So do you have to speak French?
No. I mean, I don't think they have it there yet. But those are things that we're super excited about.
Yeah.
Integrating that, like knowing things like the weather and stuff.
So give me a little bit more of an example. So you're walking around the street of Paris with your phone, and would you talk to it or talk back to you? I mean, how do you sort of?
Yeah, we're not really
Just
ready to share our thoughts there.
Yeah,
but things that we're super excited about, like in terms of what to do in Paris, right? Part of our launch in April, our new mobile product is that we have a new set of guidebooks, right? And when you look at, for example, TripAdvisor for San Francisco, or you type into Google top things to do in San Francisco, the first thing you get is, Fisherman's Wharf, Alcatraz, things like that.
We should apologize to all the tourists who end up down there.
When you look at what we've done is that we asked our hosts for years, what couple places in your neighborhood would you suggest, that your guests cannot miss? What we saw in aggregate is that, it looks incredibly different. The top thing that we recommend is Dolores Park, Nopa, things that locals tend to do more. And so our bend is to always move in that direction, but what we're investing more and more in is like, okay, Dolores Park is right for this person, but it may not be right for my mom, who should be going, this other place in Bernal Heights.
And what role then? So I understand prior to visiting San Francisco or Paris, sort of helping someone figure out an itinerary, or even once they're there. What about afterwards? How do you validate? What kind of cycle do you have, a feedback loop, to know that your recommendations work?
Yeah, well, we've always had trust and safety has always been paramount to what we do, and we've always had robust reviews that are tied to the transaction. And what we found is that the reviews are a great way to get more and more information. We were looking for information that was in the text of the reviews, but recently we started adding actual structured data to the reviews. So, okay, you stayed in this listing.
Yeah.
Was it modern? Was it eclectic? Was it rustic? And we're collecting more and more information and correlating that with obviously like, did you have a great experience? Now, in the future, when people start searching, they'll have different characteristics beyond neighborhood, but like maybe you only want to stay in a modern home. Maybe you don't want to stay in a more rustic home.
And so, in the food world, there's sort of now people are trying different companies, Baidu's, being able to sort of drill down instead of facial recognition, they've got food recognition. Take a picture of your Kung Pao, and they know it's, and you rate the Kung Pao, not just the restaurant, and so you know where to go for the best grilled cheese or the best Kung Pao or whatever. And so, do you foresee the granularity? So you're not just measuring, hey, it was a good experience, thumbs up, thumbs down, but really nice soft bed or a hard firm bed, or
yeah. I mean,
how granular
to zoom out for a second. I mean, Airbnb, provides homes for trips, but we're thinking much bigger than that. We want to really think about how we can improve the entire experience. That's why we started getting into things like what to do in the neighborhood and even match the neighborhood. And we want to even take it further and ask ourselves, are there ways that we can leverage technology more to unlock, better experiences? But we always come back to this idea that, most people when they travel, they check boxes off. You go to SFO, you talk to people, what do you want to do? Well, I want to experience San Francisco. Okay, well, how are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to Alcatraz, that really curvy street, do all these different things. But the reality is that they leave the same person that they came. Actually, maybe even more stressed because of long lines and like mass-produced tourism.
Your vacation after their vacation.
What we want to do is actually connect them with locals and connect them so they can have a really amazing offline experience. And I think that there's a lot of magic when you can connect with someone who's not part of your culture. And I think that creates a broader perspective, and in some ways creates a sense of personal growth, kind of going back to the point about self-actualization.
So you've mentioned that several times. I mean, can you share with us, I think you'd mentioned going to Hiroshima or a transformative experience?
Yeah, I think everybody here, I'm imagining, at some point has had a travel experience that in some small way maybe changed their lives, maybe in just a slight deviation, but you find yourself a couple of years later thinking very differently about the world. And even before Airbnb, I went to Hiroshima. I was a scientist at the time, and that really changed how I thought about science. And my wife and I woke up in a jungle hut Airbnb in Costa Rica where we had to wade across a river to get there. And my wife woke up and had this creative epiphany, and then ended up quitting her job at Square and becoming a full-time baker, right? But she traces it back to that moment where she had this creative inspiration, and it's technology that got us across that river, that got us even to that place in the peninsula. But it is that immersive experience and the host kind of welcoming us that really made us feel like locals and that we belong there.
Right. And so then, in your time at Airbnb, as the company's grown and you've you never lost your enthusiasm for travel and so on, obviously. And so, what's been the most surprising thing that from?
I think I always believed in the idea when I started, and that was a very tiny company when I started. What's been the most surprising is how much it scaled. The fact that there are more than 2 million homes. The fact that we just had our 100 millionth guest use the platform. This summer we'll have more than 1 million people every night staying on the platform. And the idea that everybody thought this was a crazy idea. The fact that it's working is incredible. I think it's a testament to the technology. But the idea that millions of people around the world every single night are connecting is huge. And I just think that there's a one thing that I kind of took from that and I built into our product management team is at the beginning all the data would have suggested this is a very bad idea. Strangers staying with each other, don't do it. Right. And I think that what I try to build and how we build product is to always start with that intuition is okay and your gut is okay and vision about what the future could look like is okay. You use science, you iterate, you back it up with data, and you build technology to support it, but don't lose sight of that vision even if the data isn't there.
Mm-hmm. And what does it teach you about, let's say humanity? I mean, what's our...
I mean, that humanity is really good, and that humanity really wants to connect, and that,
right.
I think it's gonna be hard for technology to help people really transform, but I think other humans can, and I think that we can leverage technology to do that, and we can also leverage technology to create massive economic opportunity for humans.
All right. Well, I think you've given me a great hope and optimism that technology can sort of unlock more humanity from all of us. So thank you very much.
Thanks
I want to thank
for having me.
Joe.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.